So we have a brand new pro wrestling controversy, and I know I shouldn't be talking about it, but I saw others, and it made me want to stand on my soapbox. That's what we're doing today. It all comes from Fightful Select that I have up here, so make sure that you follow them or subscribe to them should you want more news like this. And it was all about the Double or Nothing 2025 main event. That was Will Ospreay versus Will Ospreay. That's not a sense. Will Ospreay versus Hangman Adam Page, as my brain melts down. Now, the cool part, I want to get this out of the way first, is that apparently the morale backstage is really good, and there was one little tidbit that apparently Tony Khan didn't let Hangman or Ospreay know until late in the day or over that weekend. That's perfectly normal when it comes to wrestling. But also, and this is the line I'm just going to read, apparently, keep using that word, Hangman Adam Page had been pushing for Ospreay to go over, while Ospreay was advocating for Page to get the win. And apparently, this is the worst thing that has ever happened. I want to make it clear, as always, because sometimes people get confused about this stuff. You're allowed whatever opinion you want, right? That's perfectly fine. You're a human being. I'm a human being. Nobody's opinion is better than anybody else's. But trying to act as if that's some sort of bad thing when it comes to AEW. Oh my gosh, there's another shot we have to throw at All Elite Wrestling. That one doesn't make any sense to me, because you can argue this both ways, right? For anyone that's saying, well, that doesn't sound like how a pro wrestler should be, well, we can throw a Hulk Hogan in there. Go back to Starrcade 1997, go back to Bash at the Beach 2000, go back to everything he did in whenever the flub WrestleMania 9 was. We can go on and on and on. And there's been many chats about this, right? But you can also argue it the other way, because the rumor is that at WrestleMania 39, Cody Rhodes was going to finish his story, but Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns went, actually, we think we should hold this for another year. They did do that, and it made WrestleMania 40 even better. And there was a whole discourse throughout, 2024, that everything Roman Reigns was doing, the question that always made its way onto the internet was, did he even need to be the champion in order to do this? Now listen, it got to 1,316 days, and what Cody did at WrestleMania 40 is one of the best moments in modern day pro wrestling. So it's hard in hindsight to look back and say they were wrong, right? And again, that's a discussion you can have until the cows come home. But I am never, ever, ever, ever in a million years going to sit here and be like Hangman Adam Page wanting Will Ospreay to go over, and vice versa. I don't know why I find it so hard to say that, is a detriment to any company or a detriment to pro wrestling. Now, the major part here is we don't know what the details of that conversation was. Maybe, just maybe, Adam Page and Will Ospreay sit down and go, how are we going to book the show for the next 6 months to a year? Who are our opponents? What kind of stories do we have in mind? And actually, if Hangman does win it here, we can do X, Y, and Z, whereas the cowboy goes, well, actually, if Will Ospreay wins it here, you can do X, Y, and Z. I am making all of this stuff up, right? But if Will Ospreay wants Hangman to win, maybe he goes, well, Hangman can then beat Moxley at All In, and that means for the second part of 2025, it can be me versus Hangman part 2, because of course he beaten me already, and then Hangman can be the guy to finally reclaim the championship back to All Elite Wrestling, because he was the OG Day 1 guy, and then I can be the guy to take it off him. And maybe Hangman was going, well, Ospreay should win, because he's never beaten John Moxley, and every time he has tried, he's failed, so he should win at All In, and that means the rest of my 2025 can still be my redemption storyline, which really, he only kicked off over the last few weeks, right? The first promo, I think, was, we'll say about a month ago, when Hangman was like, man, I shouldn't really have done all that stuff with Swerve. That was a mistake. And maybe the cowboy, as I keep calling him, also thinks, given that my redemption story is probably going to have to go through Swerve Strickland at some point, maybe that's what I can do All In. I can team with him, or we have a respect match, whatever the flub you want to do, right? Until we know all of those details, I do not think you can say that wrestling has changed or wrestling is bad, because a lot of the nonsense that has happened in pro wrestling's past has come down to the fact that somebody has walked in and said, yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to win. And then everything falls down. Ultimately, Tony Khan made this decision, as far as we know. So it doesn't matter if Will Ospreay is going there, or QT Marshall is going there, or Will Ospreay is going there, or Bryan Danielson is going there, or whoever. He should take all this information and he should make the decision. What I do not like, and again, I am getting on my soapbox now, is trying to make out like this makes Hangman Adam Page a bad wrestler. It makes Will Ospreay a bad wrestler. We don't know how AEW operates. We don't know what is best for the morale of the company and the locker room, which apparently is way better right now. And I would bet my ass, if it had come out the other way, that they had acted and gone, well, I should win, people would have thrown shade on that too. Oh my gosh, they're so selfish, they do not understand. And really, everybody that I have seen that has reacted to that finish thinks it's great that Hangman Adam Page won, because again, he's a guy who has been there from the beginning. He is now coming back around to being a full babyface. And the other thing you could probably throw in there is if Hangman Adam Page is the champion, maybe you can do one last match against Swerve Strickland, who also wants that title back, which at the moment would have way more interest than a Swerve Will Ospreay match. But once again, I can flip it. Will Ospreay took on Swerve Strickland last year and he lost, so he wants his revenge too. I'm sure they were both equal parts thinking this, but the backstage in locker rooms today in 2025 in pro wrestling feels was way better than it was 10 to 15, 25 years ago. So I do not think we should start, waving our flags, going, oh no, this is terrible. Now, there was another opinion put out there, and I saw this from a lot of people, that they were just upset that this leaked to begin with because AEW had done such a good job with that main event. You truly thought that, I don't know Hangman Adam Page's real name, Will Ospreay's real name is Will Ospreay, but these two guys desperately wanted to become the AEW World Champion for the good of the company, for their own careers, to become the face of AEW, and that's a huge testament to the promotion in general. If they were able to get you to that degree, I say do a backflip, clap your hands. Wrestling is a work. It is meant to trick you, quote unquote. But then the same people, again, this is no one in particular, I have seen dozens and dozens and dozens, and people were DMing me as well, which is why, man, I got to sit down and talk about it, because sometimes you just don't want to shout out into the social media abyss. It'd be like if it was 1995 and something annoyed me and I got, I don't know, a big trumpet and just went, this is what I think out my window. Or a megaphone would be better than a trumpet. But like, what's this weirdo doing? Whereas at least here we can actually have, hopefully, an extended conversation about it. But once again, we don't have all the details. Who did leak that? I don't know. It doesn't sound like something that AEW would have leaked out there. I doubt Will Ospreay, Hangman Adam Page are those kind of a guys. Hangman Adam Page is most definitely not. He keeps himself totally removed. So all of a sudden, using that as ammunition to fire back too, I just think is a little bit wibbly wobbly, and we just need to calm down and see what's going to happen. And ultimately, in terms of the headline, there is no right or wrong. It's all going to depend on the situation. I hate bringing this kind of stuff up, but let's go back to 2011 turning point in TNA when it was Sting versus Jeff Hardy. If you do not know, Jeff Hardy was in no state to compete. So if he was planned to go over and Sting went, that's not happening, you could never, ever, ever say that Sting was wrong to do that. It would have been 100% the right thing to do. But you could have taken that story and gone, oh my gosh, I Sting, can't believe blah, blah, blah. Made a bunch of noise about Sting. And again, he was the guy at the center part of that 1997 controversy at Starrcade. Now listen, I was still super young when this was going on, but I was old enough to be so captivated by Sting coming from down the rafters, I kind of started sneakily watching WCW, even though I was more of a WWF guy. And to get to, I hate calling it this, but it's just a great way to explain it, to get to WCW's version of WrestleMania and to have false finishes and fast counts which weren't a fast count, and apparently Hulk Hogan backstage telling the referee you don't do a fast count, that Eric Bischoff said you have to do a fast count. So the left hand not talking to the right hand, people seemingly going out of their way to sort of crater this main event, so Sting, even when he won that championship, wouldn't be seen as the guy. Who wants that? Who wants to go back to that as I accidentally hit something that's on my table? That's not good pro wrestling. I would imagine that the best pro wrestling company ever, and this is never going to happen because of the human race, would be having someone on top that is super dialed in creatively, and you get two people that are going to have a match in a room, and you all talk it out, and you all leave on the same page, even if the two guys or two girls that went in thought that they should win and then it changes, or if they both go in saying, well, I think the other person should win. As long as you can explain to either individual, this is why I think it's good or this is why I think it's bad, and you all get on the same page, that is when wrestling blows up, and that's when wrestling becomes super interesting. Again, I think there would be more room for a discussion here. I mean, there's always room for discussion, but there'd be more evidence if the wrong person had won. But that's why this main event was so good. There was no wrong. They had done such a good job in their promos and the build-up and the wins and losses beforehand that you had Team Will Ospreay and you had Team Hangman Adam Page. And that's the stuff that I get so frustrated doesn't become videos that we are making. And maybe that's me too. Maybe I should lean into it more. But there were some wonderful debates that you could have gone and seen on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or whatever of people in their their fan characters, I do stupid things with my fingers, being like, well, I think Will Ospreay should win because he did this and he did this. And it wasn't stuff he was doing in his real life. It was stuff based on his Dynamite debut way back when, or the things that happened with the Don Callis family, or the steel cage match against Carl Fletcher, or the fact that, maybe he should have won it when Bryan Danielson won it at the Wembley All-In, blah, blah, blah. And Hangman Adam Page also had his protectors going, but no, Hangman Adam Page was leading the company. I understand he went through some bad times, but that's why he needs this win and he needs to beat Moxley at All-In, otherwise he's never going to get his smile back, and all these kind of things. That is when wrestling fandom is at its best. There's no shenanigans, there's no nonsense, there's no talking about the real side, and of course we want that. Let's not pretend otherwise. What usually happens is you get into wrestling, you fall off for a little bit, and what totally reels you back in is when you learn about the crazy behind the scenes and you get hooked. And going forward, there will absolutely be people that fall out backstage about who should win and who should lose. But there's also going to be times when everybody's on the same page and thinks, man, you've done a great job, and I think right now it'd actually suit you better to win. And in this situation, even, let's say it's Will Ospreay saying to Hangman, man, I think you should be the guy. It is 99.9% of certainty Will Ospreay, who, by the way, didn't get to AEW by fluke, didn't become one of the best wrestlers in the world by fluke, had also pondered, well, actually, if Hangman wins, I can do all this stuff, and I think that's going to be better for my character. I don't want to pull the curtain back too much, but as I always say, I've seen Steve Austin and Bret Hart discuss their WrestleMania match. So if they can do it, I think we can all do it. I had a big program with Tate Mayfair's in Progress Wrestling. You can see it right now on Progress on Demand, Demand Progress. Make sure you sign up for that if you're interested. And there's a few clips on my channel too. Just search for it, you'll find it. Just search YouTube. And I can't give away too much because hopefully one day we'll get back to it. But I petitioned, as well, along with other people, it was a big discussion, it wasn't just me, that I should lose every single match. We had 3 sort of big matches and I lost all 3. So my record against Tate was 0-3. And it even built to a big street fight that was after a whole year of feuding, and everybody thought that I was going to win, and then I lost. And that helped me. I'm going to leave it there because I don't want... So yeah, I don't want to give too much away if all of a sudden we do go back to it. If you're invested in Progress, that's awesome. But that wasn't me going, oh, I'm such a nice guy, I just want to do it. It was exactly what I just talked about. It was sitting there and going, well, I have this and he has that. And if I do this, I can actually use it to then order to help myself at a different time, come a different month. And what I'm going to say is that in the October, after we'd had that street fight, so 10 months later, I became the Proteus champion. We'll leave it there and we'll draw a line under it. And I'm not saying that you can't have an opinion just because you're not a wrestler. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that off the back of my own experience, where I've seen it firsthand at a Progress Wrestling level, because the comments can be, well, that's not as big as these companies. Wrestling's wrestling, man. That's the one thing you learn. All the things that get bigger is the money and the crowds, right? The nonsense is all the same. But in that moment, I just knew that was the right thing to do. And it wasn't because I was like, man, Tate, I want you to have your moment. But of course I did, on one level. But it's more about that I'd sat down and strategized what would be better for me. And I thought, in this instance, Tate should win because he's going to be able to do this and I'm going to be able to do that. And I think I was proven right. And I would imagine he would have said the same too. So I don't mind people being upset about this, but I do not like, personally, and I could be wrong as well, acting like this is another terrible thing that AEW has done or they don't know how to run a wrestling promotion. That is BS. That Double or Nothing pay-per-view was awesome. It was excellent. I do think the shows are too long. That's kind of become a bit long in the tooth now because everybody is saying it. And it's probably true. I think Brian Alvarez of the Wrestling Observer said he had talked to some people in AEW who agree they could be shortened a little bit, and maybe that will happen. But there's also a bunch of people that think those lengths are fine, but there were some matches I would have moved to Dynamite. So I'm not saying it was like the best show I've ever seen in my life, but when they wanted to hit, they absolutely hit. They got some super interesting storylines right now, and I think they've got their momentum back. And if you don't feel that way, you're perfectly entitled, but it doesn't mean it's not true for a certain section of people, which also means hearing that Will Ospreay and Hangman Adam Page had a big love-in as they tried to figure out what was best for the company is exactly what AEW needs. I think my favorite thing about wrestling at the moment, which is an exaggeration, but one of my favorite things, is that WWE has become the Disneyland of pro wrestling, meaning that AEW can be a little bit more gritty, a little bit more edgy, and dare I say, a little bit more independent, which I use as a positive thing, and that makes it stand out. And I love what they're all doing. I really do. You can get burnt out on pro wrestling because there is so much of it, but if you just consume one and try and stay in that lane, nobody is doing bad work at the moment, and dare I say it, it's even better than the Attitude Era. Now, of course, we have to compare that to Raw and SmackDown. And if you go back and watch some of those shows now, a lot of it is garbage. And they didn't have the likes of Steve Austin and The Rock doing their thing, I do not think we'd look back with rose-tinted spectacles, right? Whereas now, I honestly think with SmackDown especially, if SmackDown can go back for 2 hours, I think it's probably going to be the best state SmackDown's ever been in, or at least the best for a while. Maybe not as good as the last couple of years, but I'm talking about in the modern day. And Raw, it's 2.5 hours. Most weeks it goes by and I'm like, okay, there are a few things that don't work for me as an individual fan, but overall it's pretty good. And you have stars and the fans are into it, and there isn't this weird sort of falling out between the audience and management, which happened all of the time. So people being friends, people getting on is not something that I'm going to yell about. And even though Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes did it differently, that one worked out. The stuff with Hulk Hogan barely ever worked out, and it was bullshit. And if Hangman Adam Page and Will Ospreay could construct a feud to those levels, then fine. Go back to the WrestleMania 30 me match that we've already talked about between Bret and Steve Austin. Trust me, Bret Hart would have sat down and meticulously figured it out and gone, Steve, you need to pass that to the sharpshooter for X, Y, and Z. And Steve Austin would have gone, you're 100% right, Bret. And they made it work. Sometimes I think we have to sort of take a step back and realize they are the professionals and they have got to a level for a reason. Just to double down before the comments go crazy doesn't mean every single thing they do is right. But it also means not every single thing they do is wrong. And I'm just so bored of these grifters. That's what I'm going to call them. And it's not the people you think think it is. We're talking about this person. I ain't talking about anyone of any note. But I'm just talking about some grifters who will just act that every single thing that AEW doing is bad. And they do it WWE too. And it's not right. And it's not true. And we are totally ignoring some awesome stuff that is going along at the moment. The point is this. All In is a few weeks away. And we get the John Moxley versus Hangman Adam Page World Championship match in the main event. And I feel super excited about that. Will Ospreay will have a match too. I have no doubt that WWE, that's not right. That AEW won't build that up as well. And you also see people going, oh my gosh, this is Bryan Danielson's influence. Bryan Danielson is one of the best pro wrestlers ever, and he has proved time and time again that you don't have to win in order to get across with the audience. And in fact, even though people do this too much, it was him losing all the time in WWE that made him so beloved. And he was of such a skill level that he could make it work. Sometimes I think we should just need to, I don't want to say enjoy the ride, because you sound like Triple H or people like that kind of say those things, because you're allowed to get on your high horse and throw things out the pram, but this isn't an issue. It would be an issue if what we'd seen at Double or Nothing was terrible, right? If it was absolutely garbage, you'd be like, oh my gosh, why did they do this? But it just sounds like they went to Tony Khan with their ideas that just so happened to be, well, I think he should win, and Tony Khan made a call, and as I am sitting here on the 28th of May, a few hours before Dynamite, it certainly seems like it's fallen into the right lane. That was the same with Roman and Cody Rhodes, which happened completely the other way. And I'm sure there'll be some other people too. Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg 2016. Can you imagine if I had told you that before that Brock Lesnar said to Goldberg, I haven't been beaten in a long time, essentially since I defeated the streak at WrestleMania 30, but I want you to beat me in 1 minute 37. If you had leaked that onto the internet, oh, Brock Lesnar's crazy, doesn't know what he's talking about, and it turned into an amazing 6-month feud, and also the best 5-minute match ever at the following year's WrestleMania. I can't breathe now because I'm ranting so much. I'm going to draw a line under it. I'm sure this would have wound a lot of people up, but I truly think there is nothing wrong with it, and until we have some evidence to point the finger, we shouldn't be pointing any fingers. That's just where I stand on it. Massive salute to people who say, Simon, you just sit on the fence all the time. Do I? Or sometimes am I an annoying positive man? The answer is that one. Good night. Of course, it's not really good night, because first of all, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click that notification bell, especially on the mobile phone, and click the video on the screen, which is me talking about Raw. It's very interesting what we did this week. Otherwise, it's grillermind.com/Simon. You can get 10% off, and often more percent. And sometimes it ships worldwide. Just go check out the site and buy these fitness supplements. They are good. It is patreon.com/Simon316 to join in the watch-alongs, the Patreon watch-alongs, having a really good time with them. It's just fun to do content like that. Simon Miller on Cameo for cheap video messages. Simon J. Miller on TikTok for football and my matches and other wrestling stuff. Big Cartel and Pro Wrestling Tees for my merchandise. Now I probably should calm down. I am sweating a little bit, which is probably the bright lights that are shining onto my bald head. I'm also a little bit wound up, which I shouldn't have done because wrestling is meant to be fun. I'll see you soon.